for your signal. Okay. Good evening, dear friends. My name is Stanislav Podyachev, and we are preparing to organize Talents on AI hackathon, which will be held in Unit City, Kyiv, 12 and 14th of May this weekend. And we have Stephen Van Fleet with us. He's the CTO of Allbionics.ai. Stephen, good evening. Very nice.
Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Our mission today is to talk about Allbionics and its challenge to Talents on AI hackathon. As you will see, Allbionics is doing extremely important job for Ukraine now, and we will be hoping that our participants will take part in this challenge and will help to improve the product which is created by Stephen, Volodymyr Bandura, and all the team of Allbionics.ai. So may I ask you, Stephen, to talk a little bit about what you are doing as a company and which is your general mission, like company CTO?
Sure. Well, thank you very much. We made a decision after the war broke out in Ukraine to help the people of Ukraine that are hurt very badly in the war. We design, build, and service prosthetic devices, and there's lots of very good suppliers of prosthetic devices out there, but they're all remote. They're all in different countries, and my experience, I've been in this space now for several years, is that it's a long process to not only get it properly fitting to the end user, but also delivering it and then maintaining it. We made a decision to stand up a complete Ukrainian country prosthetic company inside Ukraine, so that we're able to deliver very quickly. I think a couple of big things that were different. One is prosthetics. There's probably 38 to 40 million people in the world that need a prosthetic device. A typical prosthetic device is $50,000 or higher, so about 95% of those people can't afford it. So with technology today, particularly AI, 3D printing, all the new sort of technological epics that we're dealing with, there is an opportunity to deliver very high-end functionality in a very low-cost prosthetic, and one that will last for a long time. So our company is solely stood up to address the needs of the people of Ukraine. We're in the process of delivering prosthetics humanitarian wise now. We have funding to do this, to where we don't have to charge our end users at this point in time for arms. And I think what I'm interested in talking about today is the fact that AI and tools are really important for delivering faster and more efficiently. I think a lot of our competitors, and I've seen this around the world, whenever there's a crisis, a lot of people, a lot of these companies sort of come in, they ride in on their white horse, they help the government, they reduce their margin, they provide a few prosthetics, and then they leave. And unfortunately, even the most expensive prosthetics they break sometimes. So the concept of having something local to fix is important. And that's where technology such as AI comes in, because instead of just selling a product, our philosophy is that it's very personal. It's an arm or a leg or a hand. It's part of you. It's there for life, and we want to be there for life. So using AI to track metrics online, for example, battery usage. If a person who gets one typically is really excited and works for, wears it for 8 hours a day, and after a while they stop using it. Typically, prosthetic companies are not visible to be able to see that happen. And if you take a look at World Health Organization documents, there's a 44% of the people abandon prosthetics after a few months for a lot of different reasons. So our whole goal is to kind of change the calculus of prosthetics and stay with it and be able to always see how the end user is using it, delivering it faster. And most importantly, and I think this is where this challenge comes in, we want to pervasively customize it. In other words, not just the color of it and the shape, that's pretty easy, but be able to interact with the end user to really understand what their quality of life is. Think about it. You're 18 years old, you went to war, you lost an arm or a leg, you got a family to feed, you want to get back into society. How do you do that in a dignified way? And how do we customize that device in a way that that person can go back to work, can, become useful in society again, and support his family or her family? So that's important. That's important to us. And before, that used to be a really long process, very expensive process. But with all these tools, mainly AI, we're able to pervasively customize it so that you are able to have a higher quality of life. For example, you can buy prosthetics today that support 10 or 15 different grips, the ability to do all these things. And well, think about it. If you're a press operator and you want to go back to work to, put groceries on the table, and all I need to do is be able to hold on to a press and have enough force in there, well, perhaps by interacting with that end user at the start when they're trying to understand what it's going to take to get back into life again, perhaps that's what we should focus on, as opposed to giving them a lot of different things that they really don't need. So that's the customization I was talking about. So it's a different approach. So
as I understand, but because my task now is to understand what can be done with AI technologies, but the task of our participants will be to resolve or to give some prototypes of models, how it can be done. So as I understand, we are talking now in two ways, two directions. Firstly is that about enhancements of the user as a website. So let's talk a little bit about it. So it is like a navigation or it could be like a chatbot who will navigate a user through the website and maybe through some kind of forms. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, what we have right now, and I think it's sort of typical of other prosthetic companies, is if you are a candidate or you want to, in our case, participate for humanitarian funds to do this, you log on to the website and you put the normal stuff, name, address, age, when you got hurt, that type of thing. It's very impersonal. And I think it's good data. We certainly need that data, because there's different types of prosthetics. There's below the elbow, above the elbow. They're difficult ones and they're relatively easy ones. But as I was saying earlier, that type of manual interaction with the end user doesn't really capture what's important to them. What's sort of the calculus of value to them? What is it going to take for them to get back? So I think that the ability to have an interactive sort of dialogue with the end user, and then have that dynamic, and that's where the AI comes in. In other words, based on that person's response, it can go down a different channel type thing. So it digs deeper and deeper, because what I want to ultimately be able to do, and again, it goes back to pervasive customization, I want to know precisely what it takes to get that person back into the workforce and back into high quality of life. And at the same time, we are building our product for design for manufacturability, design for automation. So we're making all these small subcomponents that are scalable. So at the end of the day, based on that interaction, that dynamic interaction with the end user, ultimately, we want to get to the point of recommending to the person, yes, you are a candidate, and yes, we think that we can do this, and this is what we suggest we can do. And that's as opposed to selling a standard product. A lot of prosthetic companies have small, medium, large. That doesn't work. Everybody's arm's different, everybody's dimensions are different, and everybody's needs different. So I think that whole interaction will be very exciting, and it'll clearly differentiate us in the whole prosthetic market. So
going further, it is like personal assistant or a companion who can hold all history of the communication with the customer from the first when the customer comes to your website and he or she begin to interact with web chat with like a chatbot application, and then we can go through all this, for instance, all those steps. For instance, if it is a military man, we could ask him some maybe documents to form application to, for instance, social service to get the compensation for prostheses for this arm, for instance.
Yes.
So this could be, yeah, please.
I'm sorry, that's the right idea. You're on it. It's very specific. It's pervasively customized for that particular person. It's almost like if you go and want to have a custom suit tailored. At some point in time, we are using iPhone applications for scanning the arm and differences and so on. You want to do that internal to this, but only after you fundamentally understand, the value, the life cycle value of the device to the person. So military, was it congenital? Is it a child that was born with a limb difference? All those things are interactive, and you just don't capture that on a form. You know what I'm saying? You got to kind of go. I've used forms now, and I've got close to 400 arms out in the field with a previous company. And the forms are important because it starts the process, but then there's subsequent interactions. And, sometimes people are a little embarrassed. They've lost a limb. They don't want to really talk to somebody on the phone. I want to make this very, very personal. So if there can be almost a human-like chatbot that is empathetic to the situation and ask the type of questions that aren't sterile but specific to that application, that's where the whole AI and inference comes in, which I think would be very powerful in getting them to kind of open up and say, I'm not just looking for an arm, I'm looking for a prosthetic device that will allow me to go back and play the piano, dance, those type of things that aren't normally captured on a screen. So,
So in this case, what is important, as I guess, is that such an assistant, like personal assistant, he is always in good mood, and we can fine-tune it to be like very polite, very understanding the situation, and we can go. It can get prompts, specific prompts pre-installed that the model will be understanding the situation, the context it is operating in, and surely it will. We will get the economy on human labor. For instance, it 3 hours at the night, and no operators available. but for chatbot, it is no difference.
Yeah, and you bring up a very good point, because typically the old-fashioned way is you'd have to travel to a orthopedist prosthetist office. You'd have to get your insurance. You have to go to the government to get all that squared around. Now you can do this in the privacy of your home, just any time of the day sort of thing. So it's a very, very good point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
the other thing to be considered here is that it's all private too. I mean, there are GDPR guidelines for patient protected information. Our income database, even on that very simplistic form, is firewalled so that all the patient data, because sometimes you need the medical data, particularly if it's a recent amputation, that's all kept in a GDPR, which there's lots of guidelines over in the EU for that. And when we actually accept an end user, we no longer call it Alexander or Ruslan. We assign a number like ABO1, ABO2 on the other side of the firewall. So for the rest of my operational team, they're building AB001. They don't need to know all the specifics that are patient protected. So we have to make sure that as this thing is deployed, we reassure probably more than once during the chat that this is private information and that it will not be disseminated.
Yeah, so it is, as I see now, it is not a case for ChatGPT or some kind of it. It is like it have to be a model which will be run at your server, and all those information inside this model have to be only on your side, and there will be not possible to ask like, hey, please give me all names of your patients or your clients. That's very important. You mentioned GDPR.
That we have to keep it private, and I think if they understand it's private, they'll be more encouraged to open up and answer some of the questions that will help us pervasively customize it. So,
yeah. So okay. So from this side, I understood almost everything. So I think our participants also will be understanding. And let's move forward.
Yeah, one other point, just one real quick point, just to give you an indication of scale. Overnight, since the time that we finished business till this morning, I woke up, we received 91 more requests in 24 hours. I mean, that's a terrible situation because it's indicative of the size of the problem. However, you can imagine that that takes a bit of human labor to go through there. And when I look at this printout, it's depersonal. It's not personal. There's nothing in here. I mean, it's mechanical in nature, and I don't want to do that. I want to create a sort of a lifelong relationship with the person who really will see value from this, not just for the first couple of months, but all the way through. So it's a big problem. It's not a onesie twosie thing. So besides all the other requirements, AI is very good at handling, scale, which is part of what we have to do here. So,
yeah, okay. So let's move forward. And the second challenge you mentioned is that end user training and commissioning of devices in very short term, while we wait for machine learning delivery from RoboLogic.
Yeah, this is interesting because this is at the total other end of the supply chain. In our first opportunity or first challenge, we were talking about how do we properly capture the data. Now we've captured it, we've built the device, and we've shipped it out to the end user. So now when they get their arm, let's call it the arm, this is where I think AI will help us tremendously. When you first get it, you can imagine that there are sensors inside the device, because what you're doing is, unlike fortunate people like ourselves who have both arms, we think about things with our brain and just happen automatically. I want to pick this coffee cup up, I pick it up. Well, here you've got a pulse your muscles or use an interface. Well, not everybody can respond that way. Not everybody's the same. So it's a hard process to train. It takes time, because what you have to do is say, okay, I want to select one of 5 grips. I want to say pick up a credit card, and then I've got to sort of pulse my muscles, and the sensors have got to pick up that signal to say, yes, I just got a pulse. Go ahead and cause the device to do it. It sounds simplistic. The problem is that there's a lot of noisy signals in there. Okay, right now we have 16, and pretty soon probably 100 sensors inside this thing printed. So you can imagine that we're using a convolutional neural network right now just for image capture. Because what happens is think of it this way: you have a whole bunch of little weigh scales or pressure sensors in there. So when you flex a muscle, a lot of those sensors will fire, and some will be just noise, some will be saturated, some will be a little bit of signal. So in the absence of a neural net like we're planning to use, I always had to have, you get a Teams call like this, you're talking to the end user, you say, okay, put your device on, make giant circles with your hand, try picking up a credit card, going through that process. And what we need to be able to do is see all those sensors. And it's really a pattern. It's a pixelated image, if you want to think of it that way. Think about it. Let's say for 16, you'd have 16 sensors and maybe 50 readings. So a 16 by 50 reading of data coming in. And the question is, how do you determine if the end user was actually pulsing the muscle, or it was just normal interactions, or do you have enough signal? It's very difficult for a human to do that because everybody is different. I had one individual that was a decathlete in great shape. He put the arm on, and in about 2 minutes, he was able to, work all the grips. I had another person that was about 62 years old and a healthy person, but could not do it. So it's difficult. So the challenge here is, how can we use machine learning? How can we use AI to not only identify what's going on in those sockets, but again, interactively and dynamically lead that person through that training exercise? What most people do is have an animated application on their website where they'll say, okay, let's make giant circles, make 3 of them. There's an accelerometer in there, so you get the effect of gravity. Then they'll say, okay, pulse your muscle and hold it for 2 seconds, and you see a little signal go across. That's okay, but it still requires an engineer or a trained person on the other end of the Teams call remotely to sort of diagnose what's going on. This is where the AI will come in, because based on all of those signals and response to these different exercises, you have the end user go through. What you're ultimately trying to do is, in the main processor board inside the prosthetic, we have state machines that define all the different grips. And what you're looking for is a control signal to say, okay, the end user wants to pick up a credit card. I'm looking for a switch. I'm looking for a signal to come into that state machine to say, hey, I've got a good signal here. Go ahead and pick up that credit card. So this is where machine learning will work very well. We are going down the road of doing a convolutional neural network because it's rather simplistic, in terms of capability. It requires a fair amount of training data, as you can imagine, again, because everybody's muscle responses are different. But I want to go beyond that. I want to sort of put an AI edge on that whole training session. So you don't need a human on the other end of the Teams call to drive them through these tests, to interpret the tests. The caricatures and the animation that most people use, anybody can do that. You can say that, but it's the interpretation of the data, and it's the dynamic interpretation of the data. Like, for example, simple thing. If I do these giant circles with my arm and I see that there's very little effect on the accelerometer, so I don't have to compensate for gravity and where the arm is, well, then you stop. You don't make them go through the sub-test for that. It's that sort of thing that I think the AI would help. So this is an interesting application of AI also. So,
do you have data sets now to use it like examples or not?
yes. Yes, I have our own data, and there are also published open source databases such as the Nina Pro database, where there's thousands of signals in there. So a lot of prosthetic companies will initially train on open source databases, and then you make sure that your training set includes the ones that are your specific sensors. But we have that data that would, somebody picks up on this challenge, we'd be able to give them the fundamental data to look at. So.
Yeah, that's very important. So I will be addressing those people to you if they will be needed these data sets. But also, what I just thought that this video will be on YouTube. So maybe some other persons after the hackathon will see it, and they will be interesting in help. So I will kindly ask you to give this like data sets links, and we will add it to the description of this video. And also we will be adding contacts website of Allbionics.ai. So if even the hackathon will go over, and you will see this video, so please, and you will be able to help, please use these links, and also contact me, because in TonAI we will be helping to pay for your job to help to Allbionics, because I personally know Volodymyr very well, and he's a bright person, and as a company we will be always ready to help to pay for those efforts, or like even experiments, to get closer, like small steps. So
I think it's great.
because so I think even if this will be on hackathon, we will pay the prize to people who will take this challenge and will present a good product. If after hackathon, I told you, we will be deciding this. I think we will be able to help to pay and to stimulate to those who want to help.
I appreciate the help. I really do.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, we delivered at a previous company before I joined Allbionics. Like I said, usually about 6 months to get an arm. We scanned a soldier in one of the warfront hospitals over in Ukraine, and we delivered his arm in 1 week. So it is possible. It is possible to sort of break down the process, use the tools of today, and get it out there quickly. And I think that's very important. If somebody gets, you know, traumatic amputations of their arm, it's very important that they get it quickly. So any help is much appreciated.
Yeah, and another my thought is that you know, we can be speaking about ChatGPT, about like pictures, videos, deepfakes, music, which is created by AI. But in fact, when you like grow up, you understand the like valuable things or noisy things, and this application of AI when AI is doing something that cannot be done before without AI, this is important, and this is the most important, I would say. If we compare with some entertainment or something, I don't say that entertainment have not to be like done on the hackathon. Yeah, it can be done and no problem. But if I just want to talk to guys who are developers, programmers, or AI enthusiasts. If you want to do something important, so here it is. This is it. To be able, like, not to say that I will change the world by my awesome application. You will, but maybe this will change one life or 1,000 of lives, people who really need it. So this is the most important, and I think this should be done, and paid attention to this project on the hackathon. Okay, so I have to read the question from Nana. She is in.
I saw that,
Zoom.
yes.
Yeah.
The question about power is a very important one. Typically, these bionic arms are battery operated. And yes, you need to have power, and there is problems in a country that's on a war front if the power goes away. We have some sensors that are being developed right now that are tribal electric, which means they're body powered. If you think about it, if your hand's moving, your arm's moving, you're walking, that's a real requirement, not only for war zones, but we have customers, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, where it might be 40 miles to the closest cell tower or power. So, you've got to think forward if you're going to try to help people. If we can eliminate the cost of it so it's not so expensive, it goes back to that front end personalization. If I don't have power in my village, how do I do this? And if you think about it today, that shouldn't be a limitation, because there's plenty of body powered sensors now, a lot of wearable electronics and so on. So it's a very good question.
Yes, I think we can answer this question that yes, it is important. And if you have some solution for optimizing charging process, it will be also interesting to see at the hackathon. But I want to pay the attention to the rules of the hackathon. So it cannot be the product which already exists. It have to be created during the hackathon and by the participants of the hackathon. So only those projects will be able to get prizes from judges. But if you have just a project to show and you will not pretend to get prizes, surely you can show your project just because somebody at the hackathon can be your cooperator, and you could find partners here at the hackathon. And firstly, why we are doing personally this hackathon is just because we want to create a community inside Ukraine, a community of open-minded people who is ready to share what they are doing, or ready to share help or knowledge or understanding. And that is very important. Surely we do it with focus on Ukraine, but we especially will be doing it on Discord, so everyone can join us. If you speak English a little bit, you can also join the hackathon and get prizes.
Good.
Okay, so we are 35 minutes live, so I will be thanking for you, Steven, for this brief conversation, and also I will be glad to see you online or offline in Unit City 12th of May, this Friday at 10. And let's keep in touch, and good luck, and thank you for what you are doing.
And thank you very much for the help. This is very important. Appreciate it.